The Breaker Incendiary was just nerfed. Hold on, if you're a Terminator though, this is great news. And whilst I know that a lot of Helldivers 2 players are going to be pretty upset about this nerf, I gotta say, I think it makes total sense. I think I understand the reasoning that went into this nerf, and I think overall it's a good change for the game. Why do I think that? And I know this is not going to be popular, but that's what I want to talk about in this video. Alright, so first up, let's take a look at the nerf itself, as well as Arrowhead's explanation for it, and then I'll give you my take. So the nerf, as stated in the patch notes, is it reduced the magazine count from 6 to 4, and it increased the recoil from 28 to 41. So the most significant change here is the magazine count, which went from 6 to 4. This is a 30% reduction, and it's definitely noticeable in game. Had a pretty big impact on the way that the weapon operates. The recoil is not a huge change. Didn't notice it at all, actually. So this is a really small change. So really the main one that we're going to focus on in this video is the magazine count. So let's take a look at Arrowhead's explanation for it. After multiple changes to the fire damage, the Incendiary Breaker quickly became one of the most powerful weapons in the game. It absolutely dominated the Terminated frontline and is a bit too reliable when facing the bugs, overshadowing other weapons. By increasing the recoil and reducing the maximum number of magazines, we intend to make the Incendiary Breaker more demanding for good ammo economy while keeping its immense power intact. So the two key parts of that explanation are this part and this part. Let's take them one at a time. As it absolutely dominated the Terminated frontline and is a bit too reliable when facing the bugs, overshadowing the other weapons. Now, these three statements are all essentially saying the same thing, which is everyone chose the Breaker Incendiary. And this is true. As someone who almost exclusively plays against bugs, I can attest to the claim that it was very clearly the most popular bug weapon in the game, particularly on impossible and Helldive difficulties. Occasionally you'd see someone else rocking something else, like the Punisher Plasma or the Scorcher, but mostly people were taking the Breaker Incendiary. And this is a problem. It's a problem for multiple reasons, but really the main one is that the developer has created a whole game with a ton of different weapons to choose from, and they continue to create them with all of the new war bonds, which is not incidentally the primary monetization in the game. And most people are taking just one of those weapons against the bugs. So what the hell is the point in the rest of them even existing? Why did the developer bother creating all of them when most people just take one? There is no point, and it just needs to change. The way this changes is by adjusting the values of the most popular weapons to give them a place in the arsenal, give them a specific niche, and stop them being the obvious choice. And that's exactly what Arrowhead's done here. We'll talk more about that in a moment though. And the other part of the paragraph that's important is this part. Intend to make the Incendiary Breaker more demanding for good ammo economy, whilst keeping its immense power intact. So essentially here they're saying that they want to make it so that the player has to actually think about their shots when using the Breaker Incendiary to conserve their ammo. Rather than just spraying fiery shells all over the battlefield, we now have to actually pick our shots a bit. It's similar to the change they made to the Punisher Plasma, where they decreased the magazines from 12 to 8. Previously, you could just spray plasma all over the battlefield, which made it pretty OP. Now you have to be a little bit more thoughtful about your shots. Okay, so why do I think these changes make sense? Well, I'm getting off script here. I do have some notes that I'm going to refer to, but I'm not going to be reading from my script. Basically, to explain my position on this, I want to compare the Breaker Incendiary to the two other breakers, so the regular breaker and the spray and pray. So if we break down these three weapons, we'll do it first before the nerf, and then I'll show you after the nerf. Basically, the breaker is high damage, it's medium to long range because it has a small spread on its shot, so you can use it at long range. And it has a low ammo count, so you have to be conservative with your shots. Then there's the spray and pray, which is basically the other end of the spectrum, which has low damage. It's useful at short to medium range because it has a wide spread on its shots. And it has a high ammo count, which means you can spray with it. And then there's the Incendiary Breaker, which does medium damage, kind of falls between the two. It's short to medium range because it has a wide spread on its shot. And before the nerf, it had a high ammo count, which means you can spray with it. And on top of that, it has the incendiary effect. So essentially, if we look at those stats, you can see that the Incendiary Breaker completely made the spray and pray obsolete because it did everything that that weapon did, except it had higher damage and a damage over time effect, the incendiary effect. So spray and pray doesn't exist anymore. And because it had a high ammo count, it made the breaker somewhat obsolete as well, because you didn't really need to conserve your ammo. You could just spray at even long range and it would still be effective because it had so much ammo and it had that incendiary effect. You could just spray it ever at long range and it was not completely useless anyway. But you know, you could also argue that long range is not particularly useful in Helldivers 2, so that's sort of a bit of a gray area in terms of it being useful anyway. So the medium range is really the primary use for most weapons. So anyway, so basically the Incendiary Breaker made both of those weapons completely obsolete. Now, if we look at after the nerf, we can see that the high ammo count has changed to low ammo count. And so now if we compare the Incendiary Breaker to the Spray and Pray, the Incendiary Breaker no longer makes both the Spray and Pray and the Breaker obsolete. It doesn't make the Spray and Pray obsolete because that high ammo count has changed to a low ammo count, and so you can no longer spray with it. You can spray with the Spray and Pray, you can't spray with the Incendiary Breaker, because if you do, you'll run out of ammo. And the Incendiary Breaker no longer invalidates the Breaker because it's no longer useful at long range because you can't spray with it anymore. You have to conserve your shots, and so it no longer makes the Breaker's long range capability obsolete. And so now basically all three of these weapons have their niche. The Breaker is your high damage, long range precision shotgun. The Spray and Pray is your low damage, short to medium range spraying shotgun. And the Breaker Incendiary is your medium damage, short to medium range incendiary shotgun. So basically they all have their niches. On top of that, I just want to say that this weapon is still incredibly powerful against bugs. It's still definitely one of the best bug weapons in the game. Firstly, after the nerf, it still shreds charges in like 4 shots or something like that. Absolutely ridiculous. Better than any other primary weapon in the game, hands down. Even better than the machine gun stratagem weapon. You can kill impalers in about a clip, a little bit less than a single clip, if you get up close to them. It's still incredibly good, probably the best anti-shrieker weapon in the game. So it's still unbelievable against them. You can't spray at the sky anymore with it because you run out of ammo, but just a single shot, if it just touches a shrieker, will kill it. And it's still obviously one of the best anti-chaff, anti-bug weapons in the game. It's still incredible against them. You just have to basically pick your shots a little bit more. You can't just spray the whole clip at whatever you can see moving in front of you. You have to kind of be a little bit more careful with your shots. And the other thing it kind of forces you to do is to, and I know this might be a novel idea for some players, but use your sidearm. So in the past, I know people would use the Breaker Incendiary to take out things like hive guards that had medium armor. You just spray at them until you eventually did enough fire damage or hit enough of their weak spots to kill them, or their light armored spots. But now it's much better to use something like a Senator, which has medium armor penetration, and just pull that out, take a few shots of the hive guard, and then switch back to your Breaker Incendiary. And you also just want to let the incendiary effect do its damage, rather than just trying to spray at everything to DPS them down with the shots. You want to actually let the incendiary effect do its damage. So take a couple of shots at your enemies, and then let them burn for a bit, switch targets, and then if they're still not dead, you can come back, give them one more shot, and kill them. So no more spraying at everything that exists around you, and just hoping you kill it all. Now you want to just take your time a little bit more. And also, you can just completely negate most of this if you just take a supply backpack. So I know that's not an ideal choice, but if you really want to use this Breaker Incendiary as though it's like a spray and pray with Incendiary effect, which is what it used to be, then just take a supply backpack and you can just spray Incendiary stuff everywhere. But I don't recommend doing that. I think that's kind of missing the point a little bit. I think the weapon now has its place, and it has found its niche. And whilst I think that change might not be that popular for a lot of players, maybe just players like spraying Incendiary all across the battlefield, it is fun, I have to admit. But I don't think it's intended gameplay. It's not what Arrowhead intended. And yeah, it's debatable as to whether whether it's a good change for the game. People may just want to have fun in the game. They don't want like this kind of perfectly in line with Arrowhead's game design philosophy, like play style, and that's fine. I totally understand that. But this video is really just to help you guys understand the change from their perspective, and from sort of a game design perspective. Anyway, I hope it was helpful for that. If it was, hit the like button. If it wasn't, and you don't agree with anything I've said, hit the dislike button and let me know down below. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.